Yeah, well, there's still some ambiguity as to what those 26 nations and their involvement really will look like. I was just talking to a couple of sources and it's still kind of unclear, and they're still kind of being a bit shifty as to whether those 26 nations will be involved in what they're calling the reassurance force that will be there in Ukraine on the ground, but also in the air and at sea as well. Now, Donald Trump has been very clear that he will not be sending US troops to the ground in Ukraine, but it's currently unclear whether they will be in the skies over Kyiv and the rest of Ukraine as well. But one source that I've been speaking to told me that they believe that the recent summit in Beijing, which saw the president of China, Xi, as well as the Prime Minister of India, Modi, and Vladimir Putin holding hands and sharing a laugh, this source believed that that shifted Donald Trump's thinking somewhat and has acted as a wake-up call for the US president. Now, months of back and forth concerning Washington's messaging towards Ukraine has kind of confused a lot of Europeans. There's been a pause on weapon shipments to Ukraine, then it was unpaused. US officials have told European counterparts that Washington, however, could provide additional air defenses, including to help establish a no-fly zone over parts of Ukraine, as well as intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities as well. But no real specific measures are being discussed with the press at this moment. That ultimately is still being worked out. But like I said, one thing Donald Trump is adamant about is that there will be no US boots on the ground. The Washington Post spoke to one European official who said that Washington has expressed willingness to provide command and control capabilities and even join that air defense shield in Ukraine that Ursula von der Leyen referred to as the steel porcupine. But one White House official told the paper that in Trump's call to European leaders on Thursday, he urged Europe to stop purchasing Russian oil and to place economic pressure on China over its helping finance Russia's war efforts. Of course, a lot of European nations already have stopped their imports of Russian oil. There's only about $1 billion or so of oil still coming in to Europe's shores now. Now, Trump has often touted that he's stopped a number of wars. He's often quipped during the election cycle that he'd have this war wrapped up in 24 hours, but it's clearly proving more difficult than he imagined to stop this war, and he even made reference to that himself over the course of the last couple of weeks.
And Fraser, we're also hearing that the US has been briefing Europeans that it'll be cutting security funding for some countries neighbouring Russia. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, again, some seeing this as mixed messaging. The US potentially finally acting as that backstop for Ukrainian security, but then softening support for other parts of NATO's border with Russia, while spending for various Pentagon programs, which falls under an authority known as Section 333, which must be agreed by the US Congress. Well, the US Congress has not received any more requests from the Trump administration for that to be prolonged. Now, among that is something called the Baltic Security Initiative, which effectively is an initiative that reinforces the armies of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania by giving money for military infrastructure and training and the like. Now, within NATO, these three countries are some of the top spenders of GDP on defence. Of course, they have Russia on their doorstep, but because they have relatively small economies, that means that US funding has had to become very highly important to them. And over the course of the last few years, that spending has been increasing slowly since 2018. It was worth around just over $200 million in the last financial year. Well, one White House official told me that this new initiative from the Trump administration stopping that funding, they said, quote, on day one of his second term, President Trump signed an executive order to reevaluate and realign US foreign aid. This action has been coordinated with European countries in line with the executive order and the president's long-standing emphasis on ensuring Europe takes more responsibility for its own defense. That White House official there giving me that comment. Well, European officials who were told about this at the end of last week, I am told, one official told the Financial Times that this cut is causing a lot of concern and uncertainty. The program to be cut is worth over $1 billion in total, but of course that around $200 million going to those three countries. I've been speaking to diplomats from those countries, and it's unclear exactly how much of that funding is going to be stopped, but they're trying to get more clarity on that from the US government, and we'll tell you more when we know more.
Fraser, we will wait for that. That's Fraser Jackson, our correspondent in Washington.